Welcome into another episode of Making the Leap. We're so glad you're here with us today. We have so much, I think, news-wise, things to to talk about. Lots going on, lots happening. We have had some really great feedback and response to some of the previous episodes that we have been recording. And one of them specifically, I wanted to mention, it was a text that I got from a friend who I do know, but she...
Well, that's nice. It's good to know people listen.
It is nice, and it's nice when they're going to be friendly, because I know there's a lot that is not so friendly. But she specifically reached out, and it was crazy, because I'm always surprised by how things interact and how things intersect. Yep. And she said, I started listening to today's episode without looking to see who the guest was, and in the intro, I realized I knew that voice. And she said, we met the Mackeys. This is Tyler and Ashley Mackey, who we had on last week. We met the Mackeys a few years ago. And I was one of the seeds that she planted for sure. How cool. I love their story and wished I had done what they did with my kids earlier.
Yeah, I had someone reach out similarly. I sent the episode of the Mackeys to someone who has moved out into a pretty rural part of the world, and she said, I'm going to start homeschooling, but I have some misgivings. I'm kind of nervous. And that's what for a lot of, this isn't really a homeschool focus show, but we have talked about it enough now that I recommend that people who are considering it, if that's their goal, I don't know, what have we done? Maybe 3 or 4 shows at least?
I actually think we've done a few more than that, because especially when you factor in the pod school stuff, which has a lot, its roots are in the homeschool realm. I think we actually have talked about it most because it is an advocacy issue. It's about parents really figuring out what is going to best serve their family. So there's probably been 5 or 6 episodes. We should go back and look specifically, but we've had Tanya Wiley on. We had, we had the Mackeys on.
One of our very first conversations was with a colleague of ours here at the Herzog Foundation, whose mother...
That was Tanya. Yes. So that was Tanya. Okay. Yes. And so she was a great one, because she had, I think it was, I'm going to say 6 kids. That may not be correct. It might have been 4 kids.
A lot of kids.
But it was a lot of kids, because I remember just being like, how did you do that? But she was such a calm voice of reason about homeschooling that I actually have referenced that episode with people when they're reaching out a lot, because she really does have a lot to just say in terms of wisdom. Just, we are the parents. God gives us these children to take care of and to teach and to lead, and we have the skills.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be a crazy, overwhelming thing, even though it feels like it.
Our ultimate desire, I mean, I know the Herzog Foundation, obviously, in this show, we hope to be a resource, but more than anything, I hope that we're a source of encouragement for people whose priority, our whole focus, I think, bottom line is being disciples of Christ and training up children in the way they should go, and hopefully advocating and being disciples for Christ through them as well. That's our hope. If that comes through homeschool or private Christian school or some other form, so be it. But I think I think by and large, that is the common thread, I hope, that's found throughout all of our conversations.
It is. And branched off that, I also feel it not only is encouraging parents, but I think we're starting to find more and more we're connecting with people that are not finding what they want, so they're starting their own school. And that it becomes like that second branch, basically. So that advocacy, leading with Christ's example in mind, and then, don't have what we need, we're gonna start our own. So that's kind of a cool thing.
I've been saying so much on the radio show. My radio shows are now becoming more like Making the Leap shows, because I'm spending whole segments telling, my talk show audience, political and news audience, that you cannot continue to wrestle with public school and try to correct and force public school to change where they're currently going. You can't. You have the opportunity to rescue your children from these situations. And I'm slowly trying to advocate that more and more people, rather than try to change the system, create your own new system.
Yeah.
That is not to say that I don't think people ought to run for school board and make an impact in their community. But I have to tell you that it just seems to me, and we're going to go through some of the headlines in a little bit, I don't feel like we're winning the culture in the traditional public school setting right now.
No, but I agree. I do agree with you. I don't want to argue at all with that. I think that's important.
God will ultimately win.
Yes, absolutely. And when we do talk about, the culture won't win, or we won't win against the culture. I do agree with that. But I also think this show does help encourage people that are teaching, that are like, they are Christians and they're struggling. And so I think it at least does offer a little bit of just, you are still being called to be the hands and feet of Jesus, and I commend that. And that's got to be hard too. And so offering up some of these other resources and conversations, I think, is helpful because it is a struggle.
We have friends, and you know this, that there are a lot of great teachers, yes, you're right, who are advocates, and how about using your skills and walking?
Yeah. No, that's true.
That's hard to do.
Right.
Financially, it's hard to do. Our friends, he's literally a financial planner. So he looks at numbers all day long, and they're trying to look at the reality of what does it mean to pull out of that public teacher retirement program and go into a public or a private school, a Christian school setting and teach. That's a step backwards financially, but it's a huge step forward for your faith. So,
well, and I keep coming back to a conversation I had with a teacher who left public school after about 20 years. And she was telling me with tears in her eyes, she said she was telling her husband, I have to leave. I've got to get out. And I know she was close to retirement at that point. And he said, I don't know how we're going to do this financially. And she said, I don't care. She specifically said, I'll live in my car if I have to, but I am losing my soul as I sit here in public school. And it does break my heart as a former public school teacher to know that that's the direction that things have gone for so many. I know there are pockets of real goodness and pockets of normalcy, but I think they're the minority. Now, I don't think it's the majority of what's happening in education.
I don't think there's a school that's untouched by it. And I think if you live in a world where you think your school's untouched by it, you're probably kidding yourself.
Yes, I agree. We also had an email. We have an email that people can reach out, which we leave at the end of each episode, and I know it's in the show notes. But we had somebody else reach out to us, and also referencing the episode from last week with the Mackeys. And she wrote, Hi, Chris and Christine. I love the episode today. Such an encouragement. One of the questions in today's podcast was how to find homeschool groups, or if there are very many of them. There is a major group in Missouri that has been around for 40 years for homeschoolers, and it was the group that I was involved in when I was homeschooled. I don't know if this might be of interest, and maybe somebody might want to know that. It's called Families for Home Education, or FHE. So Families for Home Education. She said, I also found another one when I went to a homeschool convention at the Expo Center called the Midwest Parents Educators. I'm grateful for all you are doing. A lot of your podcasts have helped settle my mind with the decision that I've made recently to homeschool my oldest.
Cool.
And that was from Debbie. So I love... I don't say it arrogantly, but I love that there are, like Ashley said last week, seeds being planted all over the place and connections that are being formed in ways that I don't think people realize. And then you start to kind of see these pieces fall together, and this one's going to homeschool. This one's going to, Christian school. This one's going to start her own school. These two teachers have decided we're going to pull out and do this. And it's something that is mind-boggling to witness, and I'm really grateful to be able to help facilitate that a little bit or witness it a little bit.
I just hope the show also is a source of support for people that, I've said this a lot, but I'm so tired of the notion, and I suffered from this forever, that the binary choice that exists for us out there is some extraordinarily back-breaking expensive school or public school, and that's it. That's just not true. And so maybe there are people that say, well, I'd fine for you, but I can't homeschool. I don't even think that's your only choice anymore.
Right.
I mean, I've learned in just the year and some change we've done this that the only options are not demonstrably expensive school, public school, or you teaching the kids yourself. There are fourth options and fifth options. There are lots of options.
Right. And you have to search them out. And it may not, I think we've talked about this multiple times, and so I hate to continually feel like a broken record, but...
And rural, and may I just say rural rural, suburban, urban, those are also not boundaries. I don't feel like there's a boundary that exists that can't keep you from making a better choice for your kids if you don't like their public school.
I agree. And just making sure, I guess, keeping in mind the fact that there are options, and it may not be the perfect option. No. Right. So there's nothing, I just feel like there's never, ever going to be a perfect scenario. That's heaven. Our perfect scenario is heaven. But in terms of everything else, it's just not going to be. And so going into some of these decisions with an open mind. And that's what I think, when we talk about options that exist. Well, when we left our state of Pennsylvania to move back out here to Missouri, there wasn't like a pod school option that I knew about. Well, there is now in that area, so things are constantly evolving and changing, and keeping your eyes and ears open and being open to, well, that is an unusual approach, but I am going to talk to them and see what it's about. Or I'm not sure that's for me, but let me have some conversations and kind of let it sit, because, looking for that checklist to just, does it have this? Does it have this? Does it have this? Does it have this? You're probably not going to find that ever. So you're going to you give a little to get a little, I think, sometimes.
Want to go through some of the headlines?
Yeah, I know you all. I am amazed at what you come up with. Yes.
Well, I this is just news of the day that I keep for our shows.
And I do, I will say, as we start talking about this, I know a lot of people try to avoid the news at times. I would really recommend, obviously you have to balance how much you consume and when you consume it and how, but this is what I think we are constantly saying, is to be aware of what is happening out there, because this is, I think it's the catalyst for a lot of people who just really want to believe it isn't happening in their community, in their school, but there is craziness everywhere. And so I think that's why I think we like to share these stories, so that people are like, okay, I did not know that was going on.
Yeah, and there's a lot, so I'll try to be quick about it. I won't spend a lot of time on each of these, but these are stories that I've just kind of had piling up on my desk. These are stories that I bring from my radio show that I know will apply to this audience and to what we talk about. Since we last got together to talk about this, it's been a few weeks now, but the American Revolution Museum in Philadelphia, where we lived for years, the Moms for Liberty people, who we hope to have on the show at some point, interesting organization. It's garnered a big enough group now that it has chapters all over the country.
Do you know it just recently got chapters, I think, both in Missouri and in Kansas? When we were moving here, I was researching if there were Moms for Liberty chapters in the area, and there were not when we came here, and now there are.
Yeah, and so it's gotten big enough and substantial enough that they had their annual national meeting in Philadelphia and got not most, but a handful of presidential candidates to appear.
Trump was huge.
Spoke,
they had a lot lot there.
DeSantis spoke.
Yes.
I think Haley spoke.
Yes.
Ramaswamy.
Those were the four that I was paying attention to. Yeah.
But anyway, that's a substantial, impressive showing. They've grown big enough that the major presidential player candidates are paying attention to them. They went to speak. And the reason I tell you that is to tell you this. Nearly 40 staffers at the American Museum of the American Revolution are demanding museum leaders, this is old now because this is past tense, we're demanding that museum leadership cancel a scheduled event hosted by Moms for Liberty there. The museum, located in Philadelphia, has sought to diversify the stories it tells about American history. Its current special exhibition, Black Founders, is the first of its kind spotlight. We don't feel, and here was the quote from the employees at the museum, we don't feel that any dollar amount is worth endangering the safety of the museum staff members in the building on the day of the event, serving as a host to a group that does not stand with our values, and damaging the museum's reputation that we have all worked so hard to build. Signed, 39 staffers. The museum employs 75 people full-time. Now, you might ask yourself, why are you sharing this story? What does this mean? I don't even understand this. Moms for Liberty wants to have an event at the American Revolution Museum, and the employees say they feel in danger. How do they get there? What does that mean? The Southern Poverty Law Center added the Moms for Liberty group as a hate group. Southern Poverty Law Center brands mainstream Christian and conservative organizations as hate groups, placed on the map along with groups like the KKK, Moms for Liberty.
There are so many different avenues to go down within that. But when you read that, and I sit here knowing full well that I was researching where this group existed as we were looking to move, because I was toying with the idea of joining. I was toying for a while with the idea of starting a group because there wasn't one that existed. And I sit here across from you, like, am I on par with the KKK?
Apparently.
It is mind-boggling to me that trying to find great educational options for your child makes you a terrorist, makes you a hate group person. Like, I can't get my head around that. And the irony that they wanted to have that event at that museum where they were fighting, that is supposed to be putting on display.
A tribute to the revolution.
Yes, part of that revolutionary story. And
well, here's what they say about you.
I just don't get that.
Yeah, schools especially, writes the Southern Poverty Law Center, have been on the receiving end of a ramped up and coordinated hard right attack, frequently through the guise of parents' rights. These groups, in part spurred by the right-wing backlash to COVID-19 public safety measures in schools, but they have grown into an anti-student inclusion movement that targets any inclusive curriculum that contains discussions of race, discrimination, and LGBTQ identities. And let's be honest, we have Corey DeAngelis coming at the end of the week here as you download this
tonight, actually, because it'll be he's going to be here tonight.
We publish this on Fridays, and Friday is the event with Corey. Look, we've had outside groups already pledged to commit to coming after Corey DeAngelis and the American Federation for Students, American Federation for Children, I should say, because of this very same language.
Right.
That this is now a discriminatory, racist, anti-LGBTQ movement, parents who want choice in education.
And I watch a lot of that happening, and I'm always, I'm sharing stuff and kind of in awe that there are people that think that about what we do, about what we advocate by pulling one of our kids out from public education, by watching what the local school boards in the public schools are doing, that we're against so much, that we have this hard right label, when I'm really advocating for things like communication, transparency, cooperation, and the understanding that there are subjects and topics that parents are going to deem not acceptable for their kids or not in that age range. When we talk about what happened in Florida, the whole Don't Say Gay bill, no, there was no need for that kind of conversation with kindergartners, first graders, second graders. They don't need that. And so to advocate for something different now has us being labeled as a hard right, far right parent or a group or organization. And really what Herzog is about is finding places in schools and partnering up, pairing up schools who are trying to say a Christian education is a wonderful tool because we're concerned for the salvation of our kids. Well, that's so far from what they're saying.
Well, that's right. And look, the LGBTQ agenda is not a Christian agenda. Right. It's not. It's not of Christ. And so when we parents who value our Christian faith and want to bring our children up in the Christian faith don't want our children exposed to that and choose something else for them, that we're called bigoted and hateful is dangerous. It's dangerous because what we're increasingly finding, and I mean, Justin Trudeau, the Canadian Prime Minister, just invoked this.
Yes.
Interestingly, not for Christians, though, for Muslims.
Yes.
Muslims are facing this too, and I would just say that it's ironic because Muslim voters in the United States are not considered right-wingers. They have never voted with Republicans. Muslims have actually become a more secure voting bloc for Democrats, interestingly. But what Trudeau and some other Democrats in the United States are now suggesting, and this is hilarious to me, that Republicans or conservatives have co-opted Muslims and gotten them upset at public schools for indoctrination on this LGBTQ stuff. You have to twist yourself into a heck of a pretzel to convince yourself that Muslims are now colluding with Republicans or conservatives to go after public schools. No, this is a matter of faith. And so whether it is the Muslim faith, whether it is a Judeo-Christian article of faith, the LGBTQ agenda that they are trying to hijack public schools with is antithetical to people of faith, many faiths across many faith spectrums. And we don't want it for our children, is what the universe of faiths are saying. We don't want it for our children. And if you're going to continue to insist on indoctrinate our children, we're going to find alternatives for them, whether you like that or not. If that makes us hateful, which is absurd, but so be it.
Right. No, I think, and that's part of, kind of finding that place of comfort in wearing that label. I reject it, but if that's the label that's going to be given, then that's the label that's going to be given. And I'm going to have to, I and other parents like us, we are going to have to find a place to just rest in the knowledge that we are following what our what our God says.
Yep.
Done. And the rest of it becomes a lot of noise. But it is a hard place, and it is not a place that I think people are comfortable in. And so that takes a lot of prayer, and that I know that goes into some of these decisions and some of these issues. Even people, coming to this event, I think there's some that are probably, I'm sure, a little concerned or a little worried. Now, I'm not, but I've been to things like this with you where, you laugh, because what are they protesting? They're protesting parents doing what is best for their kids. So please bring it.
The image of a loud lady with a bullhorn screaming at parents because they'd like to take their kids and put them in a different school is the most amazing. Like, do they even understand what they look like?
In the United States, where we have these freedoms and choices to do as we please.
I'm going to get a bullhorn and scream in your face that you want the choice for your child a different education. Keep that up. Way to go. Boy, that's some savvy PR.
But it's hard because they, when those people are speaking, I do feel like they're using a lot of words that mean nothing, but they sound good to people who aren't thinking. And so that is where it becomes problematic.
You're gonna hear this continually, and make no mistake, where this ultimately goes is to your pulpit, your church pulpit, your wherever you worship, your house of worship. Coming soon to a theater near you is not the school board meeting, but your house of worship. Make no mistake about it. When you and I are told in the secular world we don't want the LGBT agenda shoved in our kids' faces in public school, and we're called haters, well, then our faith is hateful. Then the people espousing our faith and standing up for biblical principles and teaching Scripture, that's got to be then hate too, does it not? It's the natural conclusion.
Yep.
Justin Trudeau, and this is a Canadian issue just the same, the frustration at a recent K through 12 curriculum meeting, the video of Trudeau speaking with the Muslim community at a Calgary mosque. The frustration reaching a boiling point after audio surfaced of an Edmonton public school teacher berating Muslim students for skipping school in order to avoid pride events. It goes two ways, says the teacher. If you want to be respected for who you are, if you don't want to suffer prejudice for your religion, your color of skin or whatever, then you'd better give it back to the people who are different from you. That's how it works. A Muslim individual explained to Trudeau where the community was coming from. I ask you, Mr. Prime Minister, please protect our children, our belief that it's sin that you're doing to them. And he responded, and this is hilarious, this is the Prime Minister of Canada, says to this group of Muslims in their mosque, first of all, there's an awful lot of misinformation and disinformation out there from people on social media, particularly fueled by the American right wing, spreading a lot of untruths about what is actually in the curriculum. So that's something you're going to hear a lot. It's not true. It's not
in the curriculum.
CRT isn't real. LGBTQ isn't real. Right. Well,
yes, it is. And they've started renaming it, using other words for that purpose, so that you can do that.
I got all kinds of news that says it's real. Woke teachers outraged during a recent meeting in the Burlington Select School Board. This comes from Burlington, Massachusetts, I believe. Principal Carrie Purchase revealed that some students had organized an independent counter-message to Pride festivities in June. The school attempted to make students wear rainbow colors to celebrate Pride, but many students revolted. Counter-protesting students wore red, white, and blue or black attire, including face paint, additionally stickers, banners, and signs, where many of the signs they made said, "My pronouns are USA," the kids chanted. My pronouns are USA. Woke faculty members characterized the students' refusal to bend to the knee of the Rainbow Mafia as intolerance. Triggered community members shared their reactions. I thought Burlington was a safe place. So you see, here's some public school students in their school of their own accord who stood up and said, I'm not participating in this pride stuff.
Right.
Adults.
Coming at them.
Adults are attacking them as hateful. These Muslims in Calgary being attacked as hateful. You see the theme? See the theme? Oppose us, oppose what we believe, and you're the haters, and we will run you down and run you out and label you.
And missing the whole point that it's intolerant on the other, right? Like it becomes intolerant the other way. No, you can't wear that, but you have to wear this. I just find that to be completely at odds with one another, and it's being missed and it's being spread.
There is not a public school in this country that's not doing this. There's not a single one. I defy you to find me one public school where this has not crept in.
And the other part, too, you mentioned it with the story of the Muslim parents who had their kids out. some schools are now actually telling parents, we were talking about this the other night, telling parents they cannot opt out of things that they find objectionable. Yep. And if that is what you're coming up against, out. If I ever, I mean, we only have 1 year left, but if I in these next 9-10 months come across something that says I cannot opt my child out of some survey, a program, a presentation, goodbye. I'm not having that. So I think that to be aware of as well. The people, the school boards, the school districts that are saying, no, you have to be here for that. No, you don't. And so that's something else that I think is starting to come into play. And then for a teacher to come back at those kids that leave, no, that's unacceptable.
From townhall.com last month, teachers caught sharing tips on transitioning students behind their parents' backs. Dozens of teachers met in an online video call this week. This was dated June 20th.
Okay.
Dozens of teachers met in an online call to discuss tips on helping students who identify as transgender transition at school without their parents' knowledge, according to a report in the Daily Mail. Daily Mail gaining access to an online session hosted by Midwest and Plains Equity Assistance Center.
Gosh.
Midwest and Plains Equity Assistance Center, or MAP, funded by the U.S. Department of Education. Hello. The session included teachers from Michigan, Iowa, Ohio, Illinois, and more. For 4 hours, the teachers reportedly discussed helping students who believe they are transgender transition at school behind their parents' back now that legislation in many Republican-led states makes it illegal for schools to keep that concealed from parents. This includes helping students go by a chosen name and preferred pronouns and accessing bathrooms and sports teams that align with their gender identity instead of their biological sex. According to the Daily Mail, parents and teachers in Illinois have been angered by Democrats' efforts to put feminine hygiene products in the boys' bathrooms. Town Hall has reported on how school districts across the country have been caught trying to keep parents out of the loop when it comes to gender identity. Town Hall has covered school districts in Colorado, Virginia, Kansas, California, all exposed for concealing this information from parents. Tim Scott of South Carolina, who's running for president now, has introduced legislation that would prevent schools from hiding information about a student's gender identity from their parents. Recently, a school district in Ohio exposed for instructing teachers to report child abuse to protective services if a transgender student's parents are not supportive of their gender identity. This is another one. School districts and school boards and teachers and principals who are now deciding and even passing legislatively this idea, states are, that if parents will not embrace gender transition for their children, that the schools need to report them as an abusive parent.
This is where I also...
This is happening. It's not made up.
No, it's not made up.
This is not fiction.
And this is why I do think it's super important that if you do have a kid, and we do, like we've said, we still have a kid, 1 year left, public school. He can hold his own. He's very aware of the biases. He's very aware of the nonsense that exists. However, if you are hearing these things and you're, kind of looking into what's happening, or you don't know where to start, this is where I would say pull agendas from your past school board meetings, pay attention to them, and this is why you do need to show up at the meetings. I know, as this episode airs this past week, I don't know how it's going to go, as we record, because we record earlier, I don't know how it's going to go. I will be at a school board meeting for our school district. I haven't gone in a few years, our public school districts. I'll be there for this same thing, to just continue to let the school board members know parents are watching and they're paying attention, because if this is in fact happening, and it is, I know it is, that there are, conversations happening amongst teachers and administrators, how to hide things from parents, how to keep things from parents, how are we going to rename this program so that parents don't know what we're doing? Hey, I'm going to have you do this in secret. None of that is acceptable as the parent. And again, I'll throw on my hater cloak right here. I'll be at the school board meeting to make sure these people know I do not find that to be acceptable in any way, shape, or form. And other parents need to be showing up. So if you are in that space of, I'm not sure, what Chris is reading is awful, I can't believe it's happening, go and find out if it is. It may not be on that level, but I guarantee there are teachers in your building that are having conversations with counselors, with admin. How do we hide this? What do we do? What are the steps we take here? What if little Johnny says he's now Janie? How do we handle this? it's happening. And so to continue to just be advocates and move forward, make those phone calls, have the conversations, read the tweets of what your school district is putting out. These are things that I think we have to do. And it is why I will sit in a school board meeting for the next 9 months if I have to just keep saying, your values are opposite of mine. I'm paying taxes here and you're going to hear what I'm about, because I know there are other parents around us feeling the same way.
And let me just tell you that they are not after your 16, 17, 18-year-olds.
No, I'm not there on behalf of our senior.
No, they're after your first grader and your second grader and your third grader, because now you're starting to see this push, and even in some sports. I was talking with Riley Gaines on my radio show, who's now become sort of the famous, well-known swimmer,
right,
who's advocating to keep biological men from competing with biological women in women's sports. Now a lot of these sporting divisions are deciding inside competitive sports, well, okay, biological males can compete against the women if they've transitioned to becoming a woman before puberty.
I can't even.
Now, this is the thing, and you keep a sharp eye on this. Yeah. It's the prepubescent kids. It's the 12 and under set that they're after now. They want to get a hold of kids 12 and under, and that's why this agenda is so critically important. Little kids who don't know any better, people in public schools sidling up to little kids and hey, don't tell mom and dad, and if mom and dad do give you a hassle about it, let us know, and now they're now our enemy. I have it again. California may soon pose a new threat to parents who don't affirm their child's gender identity under a bill approaching the governor's desk. They're going to try to make parents the enemy of prepubescent children who want to change their gender. So if you doubt that public schools want to get a hold of our most impressionable youths, think again. Right. It is in your district, and it is coming, and it's coming for your house of worship. And if ever there were a time in history to get your mind right about getting your kids on a new course and sprung from this god-awful pit of hell conversation, it's now. You can't wait. I mean, we're fortunate that our oldest is in his final year, yes, and like you said, he's got his head on, and we talk about this, but I can't. If we were where we were, if we are now right where we were then,
right,
I'm terrified at what Anna, our daughter, might have become.
No, and it's exactly also why I will say it's not just in that public school realm. There are a lot of debates and discussions going on within Christian schools,
yes,
about
that's fair,
about how to handle these issues and what to do with it, and why it was very important for us. And again, this is where I think you really want to prioritize what is important. It was important for us that there was some kind of statement of faith, which is constantly being revised. I always talk to the people that are in HR, and they're like, had to add something else this year, but that statement of faith that is biblically based, that says this is who we are and this is what we are about. And there are people that are Christians that are looking for school options that don't want that either. And it is exactly why we have our daughter where we have her. And then I do come across often people that are, that are uncomfortable with that statement of faith for our daughter in her Christian school. And it just reaffirms exactly what we're saying here. She's going to get everything she needs to get hit by culturally outside of those four walls of the school. But inside the school, I want to know ABC. I want to know what's happening and how. And so that is why I find that to be crucial and something to pay attention to, because it's important. It's just important to know where people stand.
I would ask anybody that objects to a statement of faith at a Christian school, what makes you more uncomfortable, a statement of faith at a Christian school or a public school calling you up and saying you're an enemy?
And we're going to report you for abuse.
Yeah, you've been abusing your child who's now in our custody because we've deemed them a different gender.
And it is interesting, people, why is it so bad to be with somebody different? I'm like, she's with different people all day long. It isn't about being different. It's about knowing what the core values are of the people that you're alongside and that are teaching your kid. And
by the way, whose job is it to teach different? What does different mean?
No, and it becomes so subjective, right? That's the right word.
Yeah.
That this person wants this and this person wants this. Well, that's when we all of a sudden have the chaos. And I just want to avoid that for a little bit. And should I ever see a shift or a problem with where she's at, I have zero problem. I was just telling a friend, I have zero issue saying we're out and now we're going to homeschool for the remainder of the time. Or we're going to find another option because luckily for us, we do have several that are around us.
The state of New Jersey sues 3 school districts over transgender notification policy. Governor Phil Murphy of New Jersey has sued 3 school districts for adopting policies to tell their parents if children show signs of changing their gender identity.
So they have a policy in place.
School districts in New Jersey who are trying to do the right thing even are now being sued by the governor and the state of New Jersey for daring to tell parents.
Well, I'm not surprised that it's him, that he's the one helping to lead that charge. But again, what are we doing? And I think that's also where we talk a lot about elections matter, showing up matters, being informed matters. So while these are sometimes hard topics and it's overwhelming and it's a lot, your leaders, top-down leaders, are making these decisions to make you an enemy in your own home. And that's a problem.
Just understand, you can be cute about this and pretend it's not happening in your community, or just say, well, I don't think it's that bad. You will be made to comply.
Because we've just listed off not a million states. I don't want to be like, but New Jersey, Illinois, Massachusetts,
there's not
California.
One that's free from it.
No, but do you know what I mean? Like there are people that are thinking that this isn't happening.
You will be made to comply. I just need everyone to understand these people won't stop until you comply. There will be no stopping them. Their advance is aggressive, and they will make your mind get right, or you will be branded a bigot in your own community, and perhaps even an abuser.
I also think that's why the homeschool conversation, we continue to have it on here, because there are a lot of people who look at us and say, you still got your kid, and fair, you still have your kid being taught by somebody else. That's a problem. Everybody needs to be homeschooling. And I understand that argument, absolutely 100%. Yep. But if that is the direction that I think things are going. And so, we try to, in increments, try to stave that off. But this is what I think people need to be aware of all the time around them, in movies, books, schools, wherever it is,
And just 2 statistical matters to kind of put a bow on this. 40% of Brown University students say they are LGBTQ now. New survey data from Brown University's student newspaper provides further evidence that the increase in LGBTQ identification is driven by social pressures, and this is why I bring this up. Mm-hmm. The latest data show between 2010 and 2013, identification as the alphabet part has tripled among the student body at Brown. 14% in 2010 saying they were not heterosexual. Now almost 40% say they're not. The spring 2023 poll found that almost 40% of students do not identify as straight, over 5 times the national rate. Now, where do you think it comes from?
Of course it's coming from our school system, where people are exposed to all kinds of things without filters in place, without biblical filters, without parental filters, where things are actively being put into place to prevent biblical filters and parental filters. Like that is the crux of the problem.
And it's been explained to me, I've also done some interviews with a guy who's head of a chapter called Gays Against Groomers, and he's actually vociferously against this trans agenda, particularly as it relates to kids being exposed to it. And it was an interesting and compelling conversation. I had not considered this before. How many people who are struggling with same-sex identity are just, instead of battling with that, thinking about that, praying over that, whatever, coming to terms with that, however you view same-sex attraction, how many of those kids are now being told, well, that's not it, you're just not the right gender?
Right.
We've now kicked this up a notch, and I'll tell you, there are a lot of gay folks that you know and I know who don't go for that.
No. Not at all.
This is where they draw their line in the sand. So, the gender thing, it has been perverted, and it's frankly a lot of. Well, forget it. I'm not going to go into it. Here's one more: math and reading scores. Math and reading scores have taken another blow as schools struggle to rein in pandemic learning loss. Average math scores for 13-year-olds fell 9 points from 2019-2020 academic year to the current one.
That's big. Those are big drops. I've been seeing a lot of that. We have, I think recent scores were released as well, just in our area, with some of like the top I think the schools districts that are considered the top 3 in our area. And then there's like another layer of school, that kind of push out a little bit further. And our kids' school actually scored higher than one of the top districts in the state in several of these areas.
Really?
And that was a big topic of conversation at the last school board meeting, because it is that pandemic loss, that learning that came from the pandemic that has to be addressed. But when you're focused on so many of these cultural issues, you are losing valuable classroom time. And that has been an issue for, I don't know how long. We always talked about that at teacher meetings and things, that the more programs and the more, the more things that we bring in that you're asking teachers to do, the less time can be devoted and focused on actual classroom learning. But it is real, this pandemic loss.
Yeah, average scores for 13-year-olds in reading are at their lowest point since 2004. At their lowest point in math since 1990. Reading
That's
and
huge.
math at their lowest points in decades.
That's huge.
For 13-year-olds. It's time. It is time to make a decision for your kids. Save your kids, however you do that, whatever that looks like. Homeschooling, private Christian education. Call up some friends and neighbors. Is there a single community, do you think, anywhere in the country, I'll ask you, you're a mom or a dad listening to this right now, and you said, okay, all right, I'll look into it, I'll investigate it. Where do they start? Give them an action item here.
I would say first thing that they start, go online and just search up school options and just start to see what comes up. Because when you do that here, it will start telling you different school names that are outside of the public school system. So that would be the first thing. I'm just going online. Libraries are a great resource right now for information, because I think they are really good at directing people to this option, and they want to be helpful. Even if they don't necessarily agree with the agenda that you're coming in with, they still are very helpful. So I know it sounds old school, but a library is a good spot. Online is a good spot.
Ask your church pastor if they know of any schools.
I was going to say your church is a good one. A lot of churches are starting to host, even for 1 day a week or 2 day a week, they're hosting some of the homeschool, the co-ops that are forming. So that is also a good thing too. And I know a lot of people are opposed to the social media, but honestly, getting in there and getting on Facebook, if it's just for that purpose, search groups, search private Christian ed, search homeschool Christian education, search homeschool education, drop the Christian part out of there. If you're like, I'm not sure I'm, there, I want to do this, use those keywords and then make the phone calls and go for the tours before you decide what too much money, not enough money. I'm not sure how many kids, my kid has this learning, all these things. Just make the phone call and talk to the people, because I think you can get a lot from just a basic conversation. But I would say online, library, searching up on Facebook. There are groups everywhere. And you might have to kiss a few frogs, right, to find that prince. It may not be the perfect scenario. Oh well.
Your kids might resist. It's going to be. It's not going to be totally comfortable.
No.
It won't be. But what does the banner say in our daughter's school again? What's it say?
And I should have prefaced first. What do you do first? I would pray first. Truly, I should have said that first. Pray first, and then start your search and continue to pray throughout that. Like just asking, God, where do you want me to have my child? Where do you want our family to be? What steps do you want us to take? If it's not this year, maybe it's next year, but I would lay some of that groundwork first.
The banner says, those who want...
You always ask me this when I never have it. Whoever wants the next generation the most will get them.
Whoever wants the next generation the most will get them.
Somebody will correct me, but that is what our banner says in our school.
That's the thrust of it, and that's the point.
Yes.
And it's true.
And they're coming for us.
We've just laid it out.
Coming for us as parents. We're terrorists and we're haters. They're coming for our kids. They're coming for the grandkids.
The destruction of the family is one of the greatest attacks Satan can level.
100%. If you want to know more, I would say also go back, look at our podcast list. We have a whole bunch of episodes from over the last year. Just searching up keyword searches and look through there. Look for things that might align with what you're trying to find out, what you're trying to think about.
We've covered a lot.
We have a lot of speakers, options. A lot of authors, a lot of topics, and there's a lot in there. And I would definitely advocate for that. We're so glad that you join us every week. We're grateful for this opportunity.
Hope you'll share this, by the way. If you know people that are kind of battling with this, or thinking about it, just send it to them as a gentle nudge.
If you're local too tonight, if it's like, you're listening to this at noon on Friday and you're local to the Missouri area, go online, go to the Herzog Foundation and take a look at what they're about. Maybe come tonight to the Corey DeAngelis event. I think that's going to be a great avenue to just have some of these conversations about school choice.
I think we'll have the video available too, even if you can't make it. And, the Herzog Foundation has a resource if you're thinking you'd want to start your own. A lot of people out there have it on their heart to maybe try to start their own. The Herzog Foundation can help you do that.
So thank you again for giving us your time. We're always excited to hear from people. So send us those emails, leave us those comments on social media. All that information can be found in our show notes. And we're so glad that you took the time to be with us today.
Making the Leap is a podcast presentation courtesy of the Herzog Foundation. Please rate and comment on the show, as well as subscribe so you never miss an episode. And we'll see you next time on Making the Leap.